was just things that were happening though in my head. And I went one day and I was, just to give you an example, I'm sitting on the trolley and this black dude gets on the trolley with me and he sits right next to me. Could have sat anywhere. There's other empty seats, right? He just happened to sit right next to me. I was right next to the back door on this up the trolley. So he sits down and right away he's like, "Yo, you've been down before, haven't you?" Because at the time, before I had this cover-up stuff, I had some jailhouse stuff on me. I said, "Yeah, I've been down before." And he's like, "Where was you at?" He thought I was with the time in PA, and I said, "No, I did time out in Illinois." And he's like, "Oh, them motherfuckers out there are crazy." And Illinois was known for a crazy prison system. I said, "Yeah." And so we start swapping stories about prison and life and how you survive in there, and you know the mind trips you do to yourself, and where men jam shit to get shit away from the guards and hide drugs and stuff, and we're laughing about this stuff, you know. Any normal person sitting next to us would have got up and moved because we're talking about jamming things up our asses and hiding it from the guards, and you know, it's just, and laughing like it's just shit you do. So as he gets off the trolley, he's like, "Yo, man, you know, thanks for the ride, you know, whatever, nice conversation type thing," and gives me a pound, and he just said, "I'll never forget the word." He said, "You're down to earth." He's like, "Yo, man, you're real down to earth." And I was like, "Yeah, you are too, man." It was a good conversation. So we get off the trolley, and I get off a couple stops later, and I go up to where all my skinhead friends are. And this story here is completely agreeable. All the skinheads who we've even interviewed for my book will all tell you this story is for word exactly what happened. I get up there, and I'm very quiet that night. I missed my daughter. I hadn't seen her, and I really do want to be a good dad, and I hadn't seen her in a long time. And I felt like I was getting older. I don't know why. Just something was with me that night. So we're meeting up with New York skinheads, the New York from Brooklyn guys, the Irish skinheads from Brooklyn came down, and they were hanging out with us, and we were trying to realign that alliance because we had fucked it up before with them, and I don't know I forget what the exact fallout, but so they came down. We're trying to realign that alignment, and we're all sitting there, and we're drinking, and this skinhead, these full-blooded Irish from Brooklyn, says, out of the blue, he just says, "You know, Italians ain't white." And I've heard this story before, that, you know, the Mongoloids and Africans have taken over Sicily before, so, you know, especially Sicilians aren't full white, that's why they're tan colored. Blah, 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 and that's a great story, you know, it probably is true, but I didn't want to hear it that night. And he said it again. He said, "Well, Italians ain't white." I said, "Motherfucker, I'm half Italian. What are you talking about?" And the whole party stops. You know, I'm kind of the head of these guys. He's kind of the head of their guys that come down. And I said, you know, so everyone kind of stopped, very awkward moment. And he said, "Well," I said, I'm half Irish, half Italian." He goes, this kind of safe face, he goes, "Well, that's okay then. Half and half that's all right. That's acceptable." And I said, "Oh, okay." So party starts going again. Everyone's like, "Ooh, we got out of that one," because everyone knows I'm kind of a nut. And I'm thinking, and I said, "Well, what about my daughter? She's 75% Italian." And my girl that I had my daughter with is like full-blooded Italian. And I said, "So what about her? She's 75% Italian, so she's not white, huh?" And again, a very awkward moment, and he just looked down at his beer and looked back at me and said, "No, she ain't white." And I just beat the balls off him. I just got up and I just went crazy on this guy, and I don't know what, you know, maybe it was missing her, I don't know. So the fight gets broken up, the New York guys get ready to leave, and all my friends that are in my Philly movement, tons of them are Italian, and none of them said anything. And I was just so pissed off at them, like, pussies. And I left. So that night I'm walking back to the trolley, I'm pretty drunk, and at that same time, for you guys to get a little time frame of where I am, it's 94 and the O.J. Simpson trial is just starting. And right around that time, I'm starting to learn about this DNA thing, about how every human being has the same strain except for one, and that's what makes us all different from each other, blah, blah, blah. So that's been in the kind of the corner of my head too. And as I'm walking down to the trial that night, I just said to God, I was like, "You know what, God? On the black, white, Asian, Latino issue, we're all equal. I'm ready. I can admit that. I just know it." And I'm thinking about G and Jello and all them guys, and I'm just like, all right, I'm done. Also, there's a story where I find out my cousin died while I was in prison, and my Latino friend, a guy I used to play spades with, when I found out he died, I cried in my cell block, and you're not supposed to cry. And this Latino dude I was real cool with, none of my Aryans came over to help me. he put my head into his chest and walked me back to my cell so no one could see me. He kept saying, dude, stop crying, you know. Is there anything I can do for you? And, you know, so I was thinking about him. And, but I was like, you know what, I'm still going to hold on to his, I always hate the Jews. I'll always still hate the Jews. I don't know any Jewish people to, you know, to take that away from me. So that was my last good way of holding on to the movement. Well, at the time, I have a big swastika on my neck. I have, you know, skinhead written on my knuckles, all racist tattoos all up and down me. When I go fill out a job application with my prison record, these ain't fucking good people skills. You know what I mean? So I'm not working anywhere. And a friend of mine offered me a job working with him at an antique show, like kind of like the antique road show. We carry in stuff and you hold it for people and they auction it off and all this stuff. And I said, I take it. And he goes, but I got to tell you, the guy that runs it is Jewish. And, but he pays you $100 a day. And I was like, fuck, I'll take it. I need work. And I said, I don't care if he's Jewish. I just don't got to talk to him, right? I'll just work. And he goes, no. And Keith said the same thing about you. I told him you were a skinhead, but that you needed work. And Keith said, I don't give a fuck if he's a Nazi or not. As long as he works, I don't care, you know. So I got to go work for this Jewish guy that doesn't care I'm a Nazi. And when I'm working for the guy, you carry out furniture and people tip you all day long while you're carrying in and out furniture. So you make more than $100 a day you're supposed to get paid just in tips alone. And at the end of the weekend, I had made maybe $600–700 in tips, and he's supposed to pay me, you know, $300 too on top of that. So I figured this is where he's going to Jew me. He's not going to pay me this money. So he comes up and he starts counting out money. And he says, here's 100, here's 200, here's 300. And he's like, you're a damn good worker. Here's an extra $100. And I said, you son of a bitch. You just ruined my last good fucking stereotype. You know what I mean? Like, I had it paid. And I didn't say that very physically to him, but I just remember thinking, you fucking asshole. You know? And so he gives me a ride back on this truck, back from, we were in Cherry Hill, New Jersey, over to Philly. You know, it's a 10, 15-minute drive. And he just says, hey, what do you do for a living? And I remember jokingly saying, I was pointing to his swat, I was like, obviously I don't do anything, you know? And he said, well, why don't you come work for me? You're a good worker. So I worked for this guy for maybe 2 months at the time, and still kind of holding on to it, still in my belief. And I used to have this tick in my head whenever I did something, if I stole something, if I broke something, and working around antique furniture, you do break things and it's very expensive to fix it. So my quickest defense is, yo, I'm so stupid, I'm so sorry, I'm so stupid. It was just a tick I always said, I'm stupid. And Keith one day just gripped me up, and he said, stop saying you're stupid, you fucking idiot. Right? You're the most street smartest person I've ever met. I think he said kid, you're the most street smartest kid I've ever met. You are not stupid at all. And I wish you would stop saying it. So we get on the truck and we're driving through Jersey that day too, and we had a good drive, you know, maybe an hour, hour and a half outside the city. And I didn't say anything to him, but many of those drives, man, me and him just talked about life all the time. And I just remember looking over at him and it wasn't a sentimental moment where it was, I wish this guy was my dad, but it was one of them moments where I was like, I'm so grateful I have this fucking human being in my life. Like, he would loan me $1 million. He would tell me real quick if I said, dude, I want to be an astronaut. He'd be like, oh, Frank, you can fucking do it. If anyone can do it, you can do it. You know, like that type of shit. So anyway, people, that was my day. That was the day I went home, and I knew. I consistently knew. And like, right away it came to me, like, there's some type of higher power working here. And I don't know what it is yet. But I know that this belief, see, I could have the belief that white people were better than other people in all these other aspects of life, or in the belief system. But this wasn't like a belief. It was proven wrong. You know, God consistently kept putting people in my life to slap me in the fucking head all the time and be like, who the fuck are you to judge anybody I put on this earth? You're one of the worst human beings here right now, you know, and smashing people and going to prison and not a productive member of society in any way, shape, or form. But I'm going to judge other people. Like, how crazy is that? And I think God just started to point that out to me, like, look,